We were introduced to him relatively briefly in Storymode Arc2 of Medarot S's main storyline. It is the hamster type TJN00 Maru Maru Marmo, with the kit of Hypercrept, Gatling, Heater, Float Legs, and the leg ability of Mascot, which debuffs power and success of incoming enemies upon being attacked. Now, as mentioned, we have seen this particular hamster type before in Story Mode Arc 2 for late game players that have been around for a while, or in new players that are just now picking up the game. You will see him moderately soon, so we already had an idea of what to expect of his kit going in. But for the first time in the roughly 2 years of since the game's launch, he is now officially collectible, in this case as an event reward. Hypercrept, and arguably one of the much better support skills in the game, under of course Cybercore or Dominion, is a support-based skill that will pick 2 random buffs from a pool. This includes melee, shoot boost, melee boost, guard boost, mobile boost, etc. It will choose 2 random buffs from that pool and apply them to himself and across the entire allied team. And because because it is a random buff every time, this does allow him to actually spam this skill and stack it, whereas within 1 or 2 turns, he can actually have a full stack of 3 or 4 buffs across himself and all allies. Gatling, and his only one form of combat, is a shooting-based skill that is a scattered AoE, meaning it will damage 1 part normally and then 2 others at random at 1/3 of your total damage. And then his last skill, another support-based skill of Heater, simply will apply a heat boost effect to everyone across the team, which will allow them to run to the line just a little bit quicker. I'd say it's about a 20% bonus if I recall correctly, which honestly will come in handy when a push comes to shove and that extra speed is indeed time of the essence moment. He is a little bit squishy in the armor departments though, unfortunately, but to be of a supporter type like him, that is kind of expected. About 2849 armor for the head, about 2500 per arm, and about 2849 as well for his legs. He's in a nice point where he's fine, but he is definitely a little squishy. Float legs, and arguably some of the first few that we've seen in a while that's not absurdly broken right out of the gate. 572 is actually in the upper tier of where you'd expect most float legs to be, and given that float legs also get A rank on all terrains, which translates to about 10% buff to all leg stats, this honestly can bring itself back up moderately well. And his leg stats as well are really nice too to aid in damage reduction. An evade at 779 isn't too bad, not terrible but not great either, but a melee resist and shoot resist of 1059 each are honestly really nice, as this does allow him a pretty moderately well overall damage reduction when taking incoming blows. And this also is not factoring in Mascot, which will debuff that every time he's attacked by an incoming enemy, which means over time, as long as he's not dead before then, there will be a point where as long as people keep attacking him, their attacks will basically become nothing more than love taps. As a pure set score, I do honestly have to rate Maru Maru Marmo at 6.5 out of 10, given the fact that even though his support-based buffs, especially Hypercrept, can be very useful, that's more or less kind of his only role on the field. And once everybody's all stacked up at 4 buffs, he really can't do anything else, as you really can't stack more than 4 at a time. And his Gatling skill, even though it is his only form of combat, it's not a very high not a very high damaging form either, which will leave his overall damage in the few moments where he is capable of combat very inconsistent. As mixed parts, on the other hand, I have to rate him a little higher at a 7 out of 10. Given that, again, Hypercrept is very solid anywhere, you can never ever go wrong with it. Heater and Gatling you probably will not use very often, since there are definitely better skills and better arms to capitalize on, but the float legs as well you could very easily make use of as well, even given the fact that despite them having a heavy limit of 0, the 10% to all terrains, minus of course S on Cyber, which gets 20, this is still a very good leg that you can use for, say, a supporter or a shielder or a healer that is in need of float legs and that does not have to bother with terrain.